back again. Well, you're listening to IBGR.network. IBGR is our call sign as a radio station, but we're more than a radio station. We are a network, and as I said, now in 145 countries. I'm your host, Jan Robberts, Global Influencer. This is episode 7, Influencing the Outcome, the meeting before the meeting, on our P1 People Lane, People Skills for Success. You can go out to our website at www.ibgr.network and download the show notes. Now, as I said, my time was running away from me there all of a sudden, and you might say, well, you said you had 5 points, you only mentioned 4. So I'm just going to finish that off with the fifth one, to especially the high season here, to keep them in line. And the fifth one was, of course, as I briefly mentioned before I kicked myself off, was application. So you've got to share with those people what you've learned from them and how you will go and apply it, because your reflection, you've got to have a reflection on the entire meeting, what went well, what could have gone better, and what is next. But when you go and tell them what you will apply, what you've learned and what you will apply, they will love that, because successful people want action. So when you show what you have implemented from your meeting, depending on what type of meeting it was, of course, you will gain favor and it will do you well in follow-up talks. So it is very important that you apply what you're learning there. If it's an informative meeting, or the person you are with makes great suggestions, especially when you ask great questions, of course. But I hope it makes sense. And of course, I need to say welcome to Mikael Korsgaard, my Danish friend and brother, who is always listening in, and a great supporter, but also a great friend. We have an amazing conversations, and it's about time we have another one, because I missed out on the last week. But, you know, he's on air from Denmark, and I know there's people from around the world, but I had to give him a special mention today again. Yeah, so I've done that now. Welcome again, Mikael. So, when it comes to giving persuasive presentations to senior executives, never underestimate what you can accomplish in a meeting before the meeting. And that's what it's about. Because imagine another scenario I've got here. You finally snag the spot on the agenda of an important meeting to present your big idea to executive management. Now, you spend days reviewing your data, reconfiguring your PowerPoint, and refining your recommendations. Well, the presentation goes really well. You make eye contact with the execs, cater to each one's decision-making style. You know, of course, you've learned body language and your personality profiling, like we do as well. You even use powerful, persuasive words like evidently so in your mind, you knock this out of the park. But none of it matters. Their decision doesn't go your way. Now, later in the day, reflecting upon what happened, it occurs to you, they'd made up their mind long before hearing you out. What a bummer. At some point in time after the meeting agenda was sent out, but before you picked up the slide clicker, the meeting outcome was predetermined by the decision makers. You weren't even included. Okay. But depending on the type of meeting, if the real decisions are being made before the meeting, it might not be enough to present your case and attempt to win hearts and minds in the boardroom. And this is the one with the OA, not the ORE. Then, even the meeting before the meeting I talked into earlier, where you sit down with your team to work out a clear strategy and expectation, might not be enough. So, in his book Leadership Gold, which I mentioned earlier, John Maxwell recounts the advice of a mentor who told him to figure out in advance which key influencers were going to be in any given meeting and meet with them beforehand, either individually or in groups, depending how many is there, of course. But he uses the phrase the meeting before the meeting, of course, where he's referring to the process of checking in with key players prior to the larger meeting, gaining their buy-ins, developing trust, and avoiding being blindsided later on. Now, this is really important as well, so you figure out who they are. So according to a communications leader, one of the often unspoken rules for working effectively with senior leaders is to avoid surprises. One great way to achieve this is to take charge of the meeting before the meeting. Ask your executives for 15 minutes of their time before the big meeting. And that's what John just talked in as well. So this is somebody else. But she recommended you can preview your thoughts and ideas and hear what concerns they have, make them part of the process so that by the time the big meeting comes, they feel like they have a stake in it. Now, there is something that is really important. So there is buy-in already before you ever start. So you certainly don't want to to hear it for the first time about what you want to convince them on, and that time be in the meeting room. Now, while it may seem like an informal interaction, don't take an off-the-cuff approach. I would really recommend, and that's what she says, preparing as diligently for this 15-minute meeting as you would for the main event. So your goal on each of these mini meetings is to test your hypothesis. Whew, I can say that in one go. Wow, I'm getting better at this. Which each executive bring to this, I'm not going to say it again, by the way, bring to the surface any concerns and objections he or she may have in order to reduce the likelihood that your presentation will be derailed. Now, this is important. Ultimately, your aim is to line each leader up as your advocate before the main meeting takes place. Now, there are some questions to pose to your potential advocates about your idea. So here are some. So you go say, does this idea make sense to you? See, listen to them already and get their advice. And the other question is, do you agree with it? See, is this a smart way for us to be investing our time and money? Does this align with the initiatives in your area? And if not, why not? And if it does, will you back me up when I deliver the presentation? See, why not ask for the ask? Ask for it. If the answer is no, it is far better that you know while you still have a chance to change direction and correct course before the big meeting. Now that is very important, of course, and there's some of these questions here. And it is so important that when you get time with these key players, that you don't just sit there listening and hoping they throw some wisdom your direction, that they've heard something or whatever. No, you're not there to try and manipulate the meeting. You're not there to try and fish for tidbits that they can give to you that might help you. No, you need to control that meeting by asking the right kind of questions, and that's why here are some simple questions for you. But you know, if you ask, for example, does this idea make sense to you, and it's not going to make any sense, well, I think it's time to readdress your presentation. And if they agree with it, and if not, it doesn't matter that it's going to be wrong, but address their issues beforehand. So if you already listen to them, you sit there, and then when you go to the main meeting, that you talk into them, and them knowing that you listen to them and you address their issues, you've got buy-in. But I mean, if you don't have these meetings beforehand and somebody else does, then guess who's going to get the contract? If you don't listen to these people and give them their due respect and their importance in the meeting already beforehand, because yes, of course, it's stroking their ego that you're willing to, but it also helps you when they are actually willing to provide you with even 15 minutes, and if it's a bit longer, fine too. But make sure that you use that time well, and make sure that you again, I get back to, it comes to me again, the Stephen Covey bit, understand before being understood. See, your meeting is not just to impress them, it's to impress upon them. And you cannot just do that if you constantly talk about something that if you had the meeting beforehand, you knew that wouldn't be exactly how it should be going. But after you've had those conversations, you might not have enlisted 100% of the key decision makers as advocates. But by pre-selling your idea before the big meeting and adjusting whatever is necessary, of course, you'll at least know who your supporters are. You'll also know who's neutral, who is skeptical, who the potential detractors are, and where they stand on the issue. Now, that is of course very important, and this is a different type of meeting than the one you have with your team, of course. But by mastering the meeting before the meeting and pre-selling your ideas, you can cater to all points of view in your final presentation and then nail it. Did you hear that? It was not a hammer, by the way, but you can nail it anyway. But I mean, that is how important it is. You can cater to all points of view in your final presentation. And that is, there is so much more to do it. Next week, we're going to talk about the meeting itself. But there is so much more you can do in the meeting as well. But we're going to leave that for next week. So you need to listen in next week if you really want to know about that. But I mentioned that at the very beginning that it's talking about influencing the outcome, the meeting before the meeting. Well, already know that you will influence the outcome when you can have these meetings, whichever one it is. And I'm talking to that later on, but whichever one it is, you can already talk into that. So, but influencing, it doesn't mean manipulation. That is totally different. Positively influencing people because you show an interest, you respect them, you respect their time by asking the right kind of questions. You actually, create a kind of relationship, if you like, when you do that. But you will positively in it because you're looking for advantages in every area. You're looking for advantages, including over your competitors, of course. How the right message at the right time in your talk or presentation will have a positive influence. But it is also about your own development, even dressing for success. I covered that in an earlier program, is a good example of influencing the outcome. And it's important to know. Now, again, we're already near our time again. So we're going to take another 2 to 3 minute break. But when we come back, we will be talking about the 7 critical ways productive people prepare for meetings. So join us. Become a member of our Insiders Network by going to our website and clicking the Join Us link. And connecting and interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter at ibgr.network. So I'll see you soon, but don't go away.